first describe to you the extent to which Jim Acosta is not a newsman, but a hack. Not a newsman, but a hack. Now, he tweeted out, and I paraphrase, that the President of the United States is well aware that he cannot change the 14th Amendment of the Constitution in 150 years of interpretation by executive order. And he's doing this for political reasons to divide the country and blah, blah, blah. First of all, the president didn't bring this up. The reporters interviewing him brought it up. Let me repeat. This is an important fact that Jim Acosta ignores intentionally. The president didn't bring it up. The reporters interviewing him brought it up. Number one. Number two. It has not been the interpretation of the 14th Amendment for 150 years. It had never been the interpretation of the 14th Amendment. It hasn't been interpreted that way yet by the United States Supreme Court. The fact of the matter is the bureaucracy, disparate parts of the bureaucracy, and then the bureaucracy generally began interpreting that way in the 1960s. There's no statutory basis for this. There's no constitutional basis for this. We know what the author of the amendment said. It's in black and white. We know what the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee said. It's in black and white. I've read it. I've reported on it. I've written about it. Had nothing to do with this subject. As a matter of fact, the author of the amendment, the man who drafted it, and the supporters of the Civil Rights Act at the time made it clear that it exempted foreigners and aliens and so forth, which is rational. So when you're interpreting the Constitution, people say, look at the text, look what it says. You look at the text in the context of what the people who wrote it meant. That's an originalist. Now, for the left, they could care less. They pour everything they want into the 14th Amendment, so they don't matter. But the media, which of course is of the left, but it's not supposed to be so ignorant, Jim Acosta, and again to start trashing the President of the United States, who didn't even bring it up. And he was surprised it came up. And he was honest in his response. Yes, we're looking at a potential executive order. To attack him and say, here he is, Mr. Race Baiter again, is sickening. It is beyond belief that the media conduct themselves this way. I'll give you another example. The Anti-Defamation League, which is now headed by a former special assistant to Barack Obama. The ADL, which went left. You've been hearing day in and day out now since the slaughter in Pittsburgh, and you've heard it from the media, that there's been an increase in hate crimes against Jews, anti-Semitism in the United States since Trump was elected. And what did they do? They looked at 2013, 2014, 2015, and then 2016. An increase. 684 cases. Well, why did they start in 2013? How about you start in 2012 when Barack Obama was president? 868 cases. Or how about 2011? 771 cases. Or how about 2010? 887 cases. How about 2009? 931 cases. Or how about 2008 when Obama was elected? 1,013 cases. The highest number since 2002. As a matter of fact, in almost every year of the Obama presidency, hate crimes against Jews was higher than in 2016. Not in every year, but almost every year. Hate crimes against Jews. Did CNN or MSNBC point that out? Did they say that the language that Obama uses when trashing the Prime Minister of Israel, when trashing the State of Israel, the language that Obama and Hillary Clinton and John Kerry used resulted in the rise of anti-Semitism in America? Of course not. Well, why not? And for CNN and MSNBC, who keep talking about the tone out there that may have led to this Jew hater, Trump hater, who slaughtered those 11 Jews, how do we know you didn't cause it? How do we know it wasn't Jake Tapper, a report that Jake Tapper did that pushed this guy over the edge? Or Don Lemon? Or Chris Cuomo? Or Camerata? How do we know? How do we know it wasn't any of the hosts on MSNBC? How do we know it wasn't the New York Times or the Washington Post? How do we know it wasn't Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, or Maxine Waters? How do we know they didn't push this guy over the edge? We know that he didn't like Trump. Well, how do we know that it wasn't them and their tone? Now, ladies and gentlemen, to the consternation of some, but not you, my loyal audience, you know I am a fierce defender of this country. I'm a fierce defender of our principles, our Constitution, our Declaration, individual liberty. I'm a fierce defender of this nation because we are a virtuous people, a virtuous country. No country's perfect. But you don't see Americans pouring into Central and South America to escape America. You see people in Central and South America pouring into the United States to escape their countries and their cultures. All over the world, you see the same thing. People in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, pouring into the United States, not Americans pouring into those places. And we're supposed to pretend that culturally and every other way, we're on an equal ground with them. Well, we're not. This is the shining city on a hill, as Reagan put it. And we all know it. But there's a little America, if you will. In many respects, Israel, which reflects the values of the United States, the principles of the United States, the belief in individual humanity and liberty, in a democratic system, in a rule of law. And I've been a fierce defender of the state of Israel and the people of Israel, even when the media, at CNN and MSNBC and all over the media, attack this tiny little country every time this tiny little country is attacked by terrorists. Back in May, when Israel was subjected to terrorist attacks from Hamas, pushed by Iran and Hezbollah, the media reporting was shameful and shameless. There are more bigots in the media than we actually know, quite frankly. Now, we have a wonderful guest coming up, and I don't want to interrupt his interview. But what I'm talking about here is MSNBC and Steve Schmidt. And after we talk to John James, the wonderful Senate candidate in Michigan, I'm going to get back to this subject. Because I've been accused, and other patriotic conservatives, but I, as a Jew, have been accused by a non-Jew with German heritage of partly being responsible for the slaughter of the Jews in that synagogue, for having blood on my hands. This is an MSNBC contributor. He hasn't been fired. He hasn't been suspended. He hasn't been reprimanded. So I will deal with him and them after the bottom of the hour. But our guest will be John James, the wonderful Republican candidate for the United States Senate in Michigan. And I want to give him a fair airing because he would be a magnificent senator. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.